Alright, welcome back guys. This is AI Hub 247. Today we're going to be focusing our learning on JavaScript. So we've been going down a path of basically putting everything together, learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and different frameworks. And today we're going to be going through the basics of JavaScript, showing you exactly how to use it, going through variables, functions, different things like that. And by the end of this, you'll be able to know exactly what JavaScript is, when and why to use it, and actually build something cool. So we're going to jump right into the project here. All right. Now, what is JavaScript just to start? So JavaScript is the language that makes websites interactive. So while HTML is for the skeleton of the actual website, then you have CSS, that's for your makeup, basically styling the web pages, things like that. It actually gives it the look of the website. Now, JavaScript is like the brain that makes everything moves and responds to your clicks and things like that. And it's actually what's used for not just the front end, but also the back end as well. Now, when you consider Node, so Node is the language of the back end using JavaScript. And today we're going to be focusing on the front end. So we're just going to set this up with a basic HTML file. Then we're going to import that script there, right? So we're going to have our script source there, and then inside of the script, right, if you have an external file, you're just going to have src for the source, and then you're going to add the file here, or the path, right, if it's in a different directory. All right. So now we have the file here that's literally going to call this actual file, right? So once we go here, we'll be able to open this page up inside of our browser. We want to pull up from the inspect page here, and we're going to go to our console, right? And this is just like as if it was running in the terminal. All right. So now you have the file there, and now as you can see, you have our variable. We're logging that into the console, right? So 3 ways of doing variables. Of course, one, the old way, is the var. Now we're going to move to the most common ways of using and creating variables. All right. Next, we have the let keyword. All right. So let is another way of creating your variables. So we're going to, for instance, just do username, and you would create that variable the exact same way. All right. And say we're just student here. All right. Then we're going to go and console log that as well, and we will see here username there, and as you can see, it is logging in our terminal the exact same way. Right now, lets you go back in as you're going through your program. Since we do know that programs are read from top to bottom, you could actually reassign this username right later on within the file, right? So now that it's actually labeled as student, say you need to label it as something else, which is where you will get more into dynamic labeling, basically, which we'll get more into. Basically, you can start building functions and things like that, but dynamically changing this, right? That's what the let keyword does. It lets you change the assignment, basically the value of the actual variable. Now, the last and final way on how to create variables is using the const keyword. Now, const comes into handy when you want to keep the value the same, right? So you don't want to ever change your constants. Usually you can use it, for instance, for different calculations, right? If you have a constant that always stays the same and it can never be changed, you want to use that const keyword. All right, so we're going to have const. For instance, we're going to go my app. All right, and here we're going to go to console log here, app name, and as you can see, we'll have that also logging into the console, right? But now what I'm going to show you here, now remember, this does not change. It will not allow you to change this, right? So if I come back in here and try to change this, you would see that, right, it gives you an error. It will not allow you to change it since it's a constant. All right, so now we're going to move into our next fundamental thing when it comes to JavaScript, and that is creating functions. So we're going to create a simple function, and you always want to start your function off using the function keyword, right? And then we're going to give our function a name, right? So we're going to just make a simple function here. Then you're going to add the parentheses, which is where you would fill in any of the parameters for the actual function. So we're going to create a greeting where you would pass in the name. Then you're going to do curly braces. And this is where you will start to write the actual logic in your function. Now, what we're going to do with this function, let's go ahead and add a simple deal here. I'm going to do a console.log, and we're going to do a backticks, right? Since we're going to be passing in that parameter. Backtick, we're going to go hello, and then here, and then we're going to pass in that name parameter. The next portion, after creating any function, you want to call the function. Okay, so we're going to simply call that function here, greet user, and then we're going to pass in our parameter. So we're going to pass in a string 247, and now we're going to look back over to our console. So we're going to save, and there you have it. Right, our function now is passing in our parameter, and it is actually going through the logic of the function. The more of a modern way to actually do this exact same function, right, we're going to write it a different way using the arrow function. Now with the arrow function, we're going to create it as if it's a variable here, right? So we're going to have a const, we're going to have a greet, and I'm going to just call this greet user 2. We're going to go in here. Then you're going to create your actual parameters for that function. So we're going to pass in again here. I'm going to go name 2, and then you're going to create equal signs. You're going to do a arrow, and then you're going to literally create the same exact logic as well. So now, as you notice, there's no function keyword there, right? And then you would just go in here and literally create the exact same logic the same way, right? So we'll just put in a simple function here. We're going to go hello name 2. Now we're going to call this function now instead, right? So we're going to comment this out here. Well, we could actually leave it. We could leave it here. So the way we call it, we're going to start by putting the variable name, and it's literally calling it the exact same way. I'm going to go greet arrow, greet user 2, and then we're going to pass in our parameter. All right, AI hub 247, and we're going to, just so you can distinguish these two here, arrow function. And now we're going to save, and as you can see here, it has called our new function here, right? And the big difference here, and it took me a long time to get this here, but it started to make sense once the more I used it, right? So you do not need this function keyword, right? And pretty much everything, the way I started to remember it, is everything moves to the left, right? So I took this part here, right, and just move it to the left with an equal sign, and then you'll just start to assign it basically. So now instead of the being here, function name is now a variable, right? The variable name. And then you go along and create your function pretty much the exact same way, right? And then you'll have the arrow part that creates the function, and then you'll just literally write the function the exact same way. And this is more of a modern way of creating functions, very handy, and you'll see this a lot once you start to program, and especially when you get into back end and like your server, creating your servers and things like that, your API functions. This is very important to understand. All right, so the next and final portion what we will be breaking down is using JavaScript for DOM manipulation. The DOM manipulation is one of the web APIs used using JavaScript, and there are a few main things and a few main methods used on what's called the document that allows you to manipulate the front end. So what we're going to do here, we're going to have our basic index page here, and here, let's go ahead and add that source here, src equal sign, and then we will insert the path or the actual file since it's in the root folder. All right. So now that we have this portion here, as you can see, we just have a template for our front end. But as you can see, none of the buttons here are functioning, right? Nothing is functioning, right? Why is that? Because JavaScript isn't hooked up. So JavaScript is super important for front end, like I mentioned, front end functionality. So we have our template for our front end, and now we're going to start to manipulate our actual web page using DOM manipulation. Now, let's go ahead and get right into it. First things first, we want to set a lot of our variables here, right? As you can see, I'll go back here. As you can see, right, inside of our HTML, you have our IDs here. Now, this is used for styling, but also it's going to be used for manipulating the entire web page. You can literally manipulate and change up anything that you see or the functionality of the web page using JavaScript, right? So now we're going to get into DOM manipulation, and this is what's making web pages interactive. Now also I'm going to put here, what is the DOM? DOM represents the document object model. This is for the front end manipulation. All right. So here we're going to get the references to HTML, and this is where we will start to set out basically our variables, and so we can start to manipulate things. All right. And we're going to start with using the variable assignment keyword const, and then we'll start to assign our different variables here. So you would want to start off with document. All right, and then you're going to want to start with get element by ID, and then inside of that method here, you're going to pass in that ID name. So we have one of our ID names here. It's going to be name input. We're going to create another here, and this is going to be the greet button, and we're going to go again, document dot get element by ID, and here we're going to pass in element's name, which for this case, let's take a look here. All right, so the name of this element that we had, the ID, was greet button btn. All right, next we're going to create another, and you would literally do this for all of the different things that you want interactive, right? Anything that you want to change, you would literally go in here and create your different variables, and then you would start to change those different things, right? So we're going to go here. I'm going to go to the color button here, and then again document, and then you're going to assign that element get. And as you can see, one other thing here, you could see there are a few different ways that you can pretty much get different elements of your HTML page as well, right? You have get element by ID. You can get the element by class name. You want to get the element by the name. You can get the element by the tag name, right? The actual tag name. Get the element by tags NS. Now the main ones that are used usually are the ID, class name, tag, and name. So getting by ID is one of the most popular ways here. And why is that? It's because you can only use one ID per page, right? One ID name. So we're gonna go to color button, and we're gonna literally do this for the rest of our elements here. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start to make this thing interactive. All right, we're gonna start really just by making this button do something. All right, say we need this to do something. All right, so what we do, we're gonna create what's called an event listener. This is going to respond to user clicks, all right, and greet them. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna call that element, basically that function in a sense. We're gonna go greet, and then we're gonna call that button here greet button, And then we're going to add what's called the add event listener. We're going to listen for, and you can listen for a number of things. What we're specifically going to listen for is the click. So what happens when we click this button here? And so what we're going to do, we're going to create a function here. And now we're going to build the logic of what actually happens when we click this button. So we're going to start off here. We're going to first start off by creating something that's going to get the name from the input field. And we're going to create another variable. So we're going to call that name, right, using const, because it's not going to change. And we're going to assign that to the name input. And let's rename this. There we go. All right, so we have name input, right? So that's what's getting the element here. It's going to get the information, whatever the user puts here is now going to be assigned to a variable, and we're now going to use that information within the variable to create an interactive greeting. All right, so we have input, and we're going to get the value of what's in that element. So we want to get that value, and then here we're going to create an if statement and then an else statement. The else statement is going to be what actually happens. The ifs and else statement is basically going to be like a workflow. What happens if they leave this blank, right? What's going to happen when they leave it blank, and then what's going to happen when they actually fill in their name. So we're going to create that logic now using our if statement. So then we're going to pass in our actual parameters here. So name dot trim, and what this is doing is trimming any of the space before and after. Now if that is value is blank, right, if they pass in a blank, nothing is passed in there, what do we want to happen? All right, so we want to output to the inner HTML, and then we're going to simply put what we want for it to happen. What do we want to say? We want it to say, please enter your first name, right? So that's what happens if they leave it blank. Now else is what happens, basically the end of our function basically. So else, if it's not blank, right, else we're going to output inner HTML, and then we're going to create a statement using those different variables, using the value that is passed here. So we're going to go backticks, and what the backtick allows us to do is to add variables within our actual string. You'll see exactly what I mean here. So we're going to go hello, and then to actually insert the variable inside of our string, we're going to go $ curly braces, right? And then we're going to pass in the name of the variable with AI247. And now we have our first literally working button here. This whole function allows us to do that, and we're going to test it out here. Here we go. Look at that. All right, so inside of this field, what's happening? Please enter your first name. All right, then we can go here, and then let's go ahead and enter our name here, AI Hub 247, and greet, and there we go. So now you can see this is dynamically changing using this script. Right, we've literally created this entire function for our website now to dynamically change the web page in real time, right, to match what we have here. And you can do this, and we'll go along with literally all of the exact same buttons, right? Every button can have a different purpose. You can change the color and things like that. So this has just been the first steps here. Definitely, if you liked and enjoyed this video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, because we will be dropping more videos like this. And we'll see you in the next video.